Um, okay, so we're diving into Five Nights at Freddy's, and
Yeah.
I don't. Did you know much about this movie before it was released or anything? Or
Not really, but then somebody spoiled the ending for me.
well, so we'll talk about this in a minute. So, okay, the only reason I know anything about this movie is because both my kids are like, at one point they were obsessed with the game, like obsessed with the game.
Okay.
Which I don't. Have you ever played it or seen it before or anything?
No.
It's not. So the funny thing is, it's like a horror game, but for kids. Like it's not really a horror game, but kind of like there's a
Okay.
lot of jump scares and basically the whole thing in the movie with the monitors, like that's the game. Like you basically watch over these monitors and try to catch the animatronics as they're doing things and not let them get to you, and that's kind of the game essentially.
That's cool.
Like I
Okay.
don't
Yeah. Well, and
personally
the movie felt like a horror movie for kids, so that works.
So, and I didn't realize. Here comes Lucy. I didn't realize how big of a deal it was. I mean, I knew that it was popular with children. Like, I just kind of thought my kids were really into it. But then it was maybe a couple of weeks ago. One of my students was like, "Yeah, like I'm gonna take off tomorrow because I have to go see this movie in person with my friends." Like, I mean, I guess it's like culturally there was like, it was a thing. It's been a game for a long time. Like maybe
It
10 years.
seemed like a big deal for people. That's why I was really shocked to see that it was streaming so soon. I mean, I don't hate that. I'm not going to complain.
Yeah,
But I felt like it was a decent deal. I feel like there was buzz around it, and so that's good.
Yeah, so that was kind of the extent of my knowledge with it. And then my niece is also very into Five Nights at Freddy's. Like she's maybe 7 now. 7. She's like really into the game, right? I mean, it's like again, it's
Okay.
and so this was I don't know if you picked up on this, but this was a little bit of my hesitation with the movie because I knew going into it that the target audience for this is not really us. Like it's kind of like a younger demographic a little bit, like kind of that like
Okay. Yeah, that
late
tracks.
teens, early 20s kind of thing. So I
Hmm.
just didn't know if it was really going to be like a horror movie. Now having watched it, I still don't really know if it's a I think it is
No,
it has
it's
horror
not.
elements to it, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah.
But so why don't you tell me kind of your take on it? I guess sort of your response to having seen it, and then I'll sort of, say what I think
So
about
I knew nothing about it,
it. Okay.
about besides someone telling me the ending, which I don't think they didn't intend to. I don't think it was not a big deal.
Yeah.
But I did think it would be more of a horror movie and very quickly realized it's not. What's interesting though is like the subtext and like the character layers that they add about like the abduction and the dream, like, which to me feel very adult just on
Right.
an emotional level. And
Hmm.
so it's interesting that that's what they decided to add in. I'm curious about the game because like, should I just like spoil alert like
Yeah,
everything?
well,
Like,
and
should I?
I'll put some text in here when we're posting this later. Spoiler alert! Obviously, if you haven't seen it
Okay,
and you don't want to be spoiled, then go watch it and come back. But yeah, sure, just dive right into
okay.
it.
So I did not think that the animatronics were going to be possessed by little ghost children.
Yeah, me either. And again, this is somebody I wouldn't say I know a lot about the franchise, but I didn't, and I haven't even asked Jonah. Like, I don't know if that's really a thing in the game or if they just sort of
That's what I want to know.
yeah.
I'm curious. I'm very curious. Is that part of the game or is that the direction they went and why? Because I guess I just wanted it to be like evil animatronics trying to kill
Right.
people. Like, what's so wrong with that? That's what I was looking forward to. And then we had to add this whole other layer.
Yeah, and it's funny, like if you sort of look at the critical response to it, like it didn't do great with critics, which I'm not surprised by. Like I mean,
Yeah.
but if you look at the fan score, fans really loved it a lot. It's kind of like the Super Mario Brothers movie. Like critics didn't really love it, but fans love that movie a lot. But I think one of the big complaints that this kind of interesting because I agree with you that I think the added element of like just the trauma of just child abduction and just all of that weird
Yeah.
stuff that's going on
Stranger
made it more
danger.
and it made it more that made it creepier to me than if it had just been like rogue animatronics killing people. Like and I'm thinking of that movie. What was that movie we watched? The very first review we did, Christmas Bloody Christmas, with the Santa, the
Yes, I was
crazy
just thinking about that movie
the,
today,
the Santa,
actually.
yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I think that what they did with this adds a little more depth to it. But the funny thing is, the critical response was that they feel like they overcomplicated the plot and it fell apart because of it. And like, I didn't think it was like overly complicated, but I can kind of see where they're coming from with that a little bit, maybe.
I can absolutely agree. I do feel like it was more complicated than it needed to be. But I guess like I don't know. I want like what was their goal? Like
Hmm.
who are they trying to appeal to? Because if it was this younger, late teens, early 20s, I don't think the whole trauma layer is gonna resonate. So I feel like they were trying to appeal to a wide demographic, and because it's like what I tell my students, your audience can't be everyone, like by trying to appeal to a wider audience base, they kind of lost their appeal, in my opinion, to everyone a little bit because I don't know who you were trying to appeal to.
Well, and so and I'm not going to summarize the whole plot. I don't really think we have to do that. But like, there was all this stuff woven into it about like, can we control our dreams, like dream theory, and
Yeah.
using sleep pills to do that, and can we connect? Basically, can we go back in our minds and see every detail of something if we want to put a puzzle together or solve a crime or that kind of thing? Like almost like hypnosis, I guess, sort of a little bit.
It felt like a Nightmare on Elm Street meets Black Phone.
And I have not seen Black Phone, which I need to see. Like,
I really liked it.
I've
It
heard
was
that.
so not what I thought it was going to be in the best way. I was
That's
a
good.
bit other people like I think Matt didn't like it, but I was very pleasantly surprised how much I did like it. So yes, for me it felt because there was a lot about the dreams and yeah. And I like the dream sequences. I think that they were cool, but I feel like you had two movies. You had a
Right.
movie about dreams and you had a movie about animatronics. And then you combined them. And I'm like, wait, what?
And the result was definitely weird. And so, I mean, I think if you look at this from a horror movie perspective, and you might have a different take on this than me, but like, at no time did I ever find any of this scary, like at all, really.
No.
I mean, other than like the creepiness of child abduction, like, of course, that's terrifying as a parent. Like, that's like a worst nightmare kind of scenario. But beyond that,
Yes.
like the
There was
animatronic
maybe
stuff,
a couple of little moments, like with the little, what is it, like a muffin or a
like
cupcake? I don't even
Cupcake
know
or
what it
something.
was. Who was like scurrying around. It felt very like child's play to me, like this little thing. Like to me, what's creepy about that is that they just come out so fast. They can be in
Right.
the vents and you don't know. So there were a couple of little moments that I thought were suspenseful because of that, but I was
Mhm.
never like, yeah, I was never scared. And that was the conversation that Matt and I were having after. It was like, because what people's definitions of fear are probably very different. And people who don't like gory, bloody movies, not that it was that bloody, but would probably say it was a little scarier because there were people getting like chomped and stuff like that.
Well, and I think that again, to reach their target audience, they had to do a lot of that off screen, right? Like, or it would be like a silhouette of somebody being shot
Yeah.
or that kind of stuff. Which,
Blood against the window. Yeah.
there doesn't have to be tons of blood and guts for something to be scary.
Mm-mm.
I mean, really, like
And we always
Jaws.
go
Like,
back
I
to
mean,
Halloween. Like
yeah, Halloween,
that movie
Jaws,
is
all that.
scary.
So, yeah, this is going to sound overly simplistic, but I think my biggest problem with the movie is that I just didn't think it was very good. Like, I mean, I don't know how else to say that other than to say that it felt a little bit convoluted. Like, I kind of appreciated some of the stuff they were doing, but like the animatronics were clearly people in suits, and the whole thing about like, are these their bodies are in there, but clearly it's like they're decomposing bodies or something of these kids. Like, I don't know. It
Yes.
was a little bit weird and
Yeah.
nebulous, kind of.
Yeah. And and that even felt unnecessary. I would almost rather it was just their spirits inside these animatronics than like
Right.
that's where they hid the bodies. I don't need you to explain where they hid the bodies. People can't find bodies all the time. Like
Yeah.
I'm not worried about that. You don't have to explain that to me.
Well, and it was a weird kind of contrast because in one moment they're kind of building up these things to be like terror machines, especially when that gang kind of breaks in to trash the place because
Yeah.
they're hired by the
And
ant.
the opening sequence, like what did that security guard do
Right.
to
I don't
deserve?
know. But
Yeah.
then in contrast to that, you've got a scene where they're playing with Abby and just like laying on the ground. And I mean, again, I guess they're trying to highlight that these are really children, and there's all
Yeah.
of that kind of stuff there. But I don't know. Like, and the other part of it too was, and I was going to ask you, was that the guy from Scream? The guy that was like the the guy
Okay.
offering the job and was William
Oh,
Afferton.
Matthew Lillard?
Wasn't that him? I think that was him, wasn't it?
Yes. Yes, that was like the whole point. Yes. Yes, that's Matthew Lillard. Duh.
Okay. Did you catch that the first time? I assume you did catch that.
Yes. I
Okay,
knew
sorry.
the
Well,
Yes.
I
Of
couldn't
course
tell by the
I
reaction if that
would
was.
recognize Matthew Lillard.
I know
Ugh.
what am I thinking? But so the whole time, they're like, "Oh, who's it going to be?" And of course, I'm like, "It's going to be this guy." Like, I don't feel like
Well,
this
and that
movie
was
is.
my biggest issue is
Yeah.
that it from the way we meet this guy, the way the shots are framed, everything about meeting this guy, it's clear he's sus. And like that and that is what somebody kind of spoiled for me, so I did already know.
Okay.
But even already knowing it, it was very obvious in how he was presented. And then same thing with our female police officer, who's just very comfortable walking into this space. And I'm like, that's either this is horrible writing
Right.
or she is not who we think she is, which is ultimately what we discovered. But
Maybe it's a
like
little bit of both.
it's
I'm
a
just
little
kidding.
bit of both. I mean,
Yeah.
it really, but it kind of is. And the actor Josh Hutcherson, who plays the main guy,
Yeah.
I like him, but I have a hard time with him because I will always think of him as PETA from the Hunger
Right.
Games,
Yep.
and I didn't even really love that casting choice. I think he's a great actor, but he always gets cast in these roles where I'm like, you are so not what I would have pictured for this. But
Right.
like, you did a good job, so okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think that generally speaking, the cast is okay. I mean, I
Yeah.
was really, and I guess it was just sort of pseudo comic relief. I was really annoyed by the lawyer character and the aunt, which, like, I guess that was supposed to be like, and the way
Yeah.
she gets taken out, I'm like, that was kind of anticlimactic because you assume she's going to be like this huge villain as thing goes on, as the whole thing progresses. But I don't know. I don't know what you
He
thought
just
about
needed
that.
something to put the pressure on to take the job. Like,
Yeah.
it was
So
his foil.
So, I don't know, like, I'm trying to think of, again, the things that I would highlight as I liked about it. I actually do think the layers they put in there, we were talking about earlier about the child abduction stuff, like, that makes it a little bit creepier, gives it a little more depth and more motivation for the protagonist to be acting
Yeah.
the way he does and doing what he does. But
Yeah.
beyond that, I didn't really find it to be a very good movie. And I felt so bad because Jonah wanted to watch it with me. So he saw it, you knew this, he saw it in
Yeah.
theaters by himself because he's a huge fan of the franchise. He was texting me after it was over, but I was going to pick him up. He was like, Rotten Tomatoes did this dirty. It's a great movie, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, okay, So, and I told him we were going to watch it to review it. And he's like, well, can I watch it with you? And I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't care. Like, you've already seen it. Just sit and watch it. And afterwards, he's like, waiting, like, what'd you think about it? And I was like, I didn't think it was very good. He's like, I knew you were going to say that.
If I was Jonah's age, I would really like it too. I do
Yeah.
feel like it's a movie that I would really like if I was younger, but I'm just so over ghosts and robots. And
Well,
it's said both. So I'm just like, okay.
Well, and I think that this gets to what we were talking about earlier, that I don't really know that we're the target demographic for the movie, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I mean, people his age seem to love it, or even kind of a little bit older than him,
Yeah.
clearly up until like early 20s, maybe seem to really appreciate what it was from a fan perspective and all of that. Sorry, I'm looking out my front window because my neighbor's up on his roof blowing leaves, and I saw another neighbor running over. And I'm like, please tell me he's okay. And I'm looking, and he's fine. I think,
Okay.
yeah, no, I'm like, do I need to go out there? But I think everything's good. So anyway, the question, I guess, ultimately is, even if you have Peacock, do you think it's worth, because I think it was like an hour and 45 minutes. Do you think it's worth like that time investment to watch it?
I do. I mean, I wouldn't watch it again, but
Yeah.
if someone was like, "Hey, I need a movie to watch tonight," I would say, "Why not watch that?" You
Right.
know, and
Yeah.
decide for yourself. I don't think you. I don't regret watching it. I'm glad I watched it, but
Yeah. I mean,
I will.
I can only count, well, maybe on two hands, the number of movies that I legit regret watching. I would say Jeepers Creepers Reborn might be up there
It's up there.
on that
It's
list.
up there.
And maybe Human Centipede 1 and 2. Those are up there also. Like, I don't know why I watched the second one after watching the first
No,
one.
I get that. I don't understand
Have you
either.
seen the
I
first
don't.
one?
Yeah, I saw the first one. I mean, I regret it from like a disgust level, but I don't
Yeah, that's
regret
what
it
I'm saying.
from
Yeah,
like a cinephile level. So like,
right. The second one goes from that to like, what can we do that is literally the most revolting thing in the world? And like, I mean, you would think like with the first movie, how could they top that? And they find a way to do it somehow. So anyway, yeah. Anyway, so not nearly as terrible as something like that, of course, but
No.
if I would say if you have an interest in the franchise, it probably is worth watching. Beyond that, if you don't have an interest, in my opinion, like I would spend time watching something else. But that's just
Yeah,
me, I don't
yeah.
know.
And I
Because
didn't know anything about the franchise, and
yeah.
again, I'm glad I watched it, but it I guess you have to almost go in knowing that, like, they don't know what they were trying to do.
Well, that was my other thing. It just felt like there were a lot of loose threads. Like, okay, so there's spirits and these robots, but there's the bodies there or something,
Mhm.
I guess. And so the question was like his brother Garrett, right? I mean, this was like the whole kind of MacGuffin thing. Obviously, he figures out who the person is that I guess kidnapped him. But did they ever say what actually happened to his brother? Like, did he become one of the? He didn't become one of the
So,
robots.
they
I don't.
they didn't, and I guess I just sort of interpret it as these were select children that were turned into these animatronic things, but there were probably many other children who were abducted and
Yeah.
just killed or whatever
Right.
he
Yeah.
did.
So, I don't know. Is there anything else we need to say about Five Nights at Freddy's, Kim? Anything that we haven't touched on that just kind of jumped out for you as like, oh, I like this, or I didn't like this, or whatever,
So I think it's interesting, and I just want us to be paying attention in film over the next however many years. This story that is like absent parents.
Hmm.
It's either an aunt or an uncle or a brother, like Megan. It was her
Right.
aunt that that this whole story kind of take place in. Now it's the older brother and the little sister and how their relation I think there's a lot of parallels between this and Megan. And it's like how do
Hmm.
you build a relationship with someone when you're dealing with your own sort of priorities or trauma or like where do we put our real family values? And so I'm curious, is that going to become more and more of a trend that we are making sort of commentary on these relationships, but by doing it by not actually saying, hey, parents, you suck, but like putting other authority figures in the picture and being like, you should definitely analyze your relationship with children.
So, and that leads me, I guess, to another question. When I think about, I mean, because there are a lot of movies out there with themes that have to do with like you said, missing parents or like child abduction is kind of like the central thing that propels it. Which I guess the Black Phone is that. I haven't seen it, so I
Yes,
don't know
yes,
that. But I
yes.
think so. Would you say the Black Phone is the best movie you've seen where that's like the central thing that kind of propels the story? Because I've got another example that you've probably seen it, but I think it's the best movie that centers around that as like a motivation for a central character, essentially.
I don't know if I would even know, like, I haven't like stored in my brain like child abduction movies. And like, I don't, that's not something I actively think about. But I did like, yes, Black Phone is a child abduction movie, but there's another layer there
Okay.
that I like. It's a good layer
Yeah.
that I personally
Well,
liked.
for some reason, just that conversation was making me think of Minority Report. Have you ever seen that movie?
No.
Oh my gosh, it's just such well, it's a science fiction movie, but that's kind
Yeah.
of a central thing. Like Tom Cruise is the main character, but like his child is abducted, like before the movie starts, but that's kind of like his main motivation throughout the movie is to find the person that did it. But it's a Steven Spielberg movie, so you kind of have a sense of like how the directing and all that is, but it is just so well made. And it's creepy, but it's got some comedy too. It's just a really good movie. Like if you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend checking that out.
Okay.
Erica, I
Okay.
think Erica got sick of me watching it when it came out because it's such a good piece of science fiction. Like it just beyond like was it set in the
Okay.
year like 2045? I mean, and I think it came out in like 2008. So it's been a while, since it was
Yeah.
released. But
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um I can see the wheels are
Yeah.
turning.
Well, I'm just thinking about like child abduct, and I guess like so I watch a lot of murder shows or like crime shows, and
Yeah.
like quite honestly, those are the ones I skip. Like I don't
Yeah.
want to watch something
Well, it's
about a
terrifying,
child
right? Like
being
as
taken
parents,
because like yeah, like that is like a legitimate fear for a parent. I don't feel like Five Nights at Freddy's played on that fear for me. Like I know that was a central theme, but
yeah.
to me, the way it was, especially because the parents were not present, it was not
Yeah.
this, I'm a parent and I screwed up. It was, I was a sibling. and I
Right.
screwed up. So for me, as a parent, it didn't quite hit that same chord, which is
I think
fine.
just I just think of like, and I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but moments where you're out with your kid in a large crowd, and for like a split second, you just kind of lose sight of them, and you kind of
I
have
mean,
a
you
momentary.
know that Owen took off at Target once, and I
Did you
had
tell you may have told me that? I don't even remember, but
yeah, and I
yeah,
had to go find somebody, and I was like, I can't find my child, and the guy was like, I haven't seen him, and I'm like,
yeah,
I'm tell get on your walkie. And they did. And then he
yeah.
figured it out, some teenager who had no idea what he was doing. And they shut down the entrance and they had to like until we found him because he got mad that I wouldn't let him buy a toy. So he took off.
It's terrifying. I mean, just honestly, like a week or two ago for Halloween, like Henry had on like a super loud Halloween costume, like the alien thing, right? But
Yeah.
like a few blocks over, just jam packed with kids, and we're going house to house. And for a second, me and Erica turn around, and he's just gone. And we're like, I mean, just a sea of kids everywhere, and we're kind of having like a little bit of a panic attack, and we split up different
Yeah.
directions. Finally, I see him kind of going down the block because his costume is so big, and I see this
Yes.
alien head like bobbing, and he just and he just
Yeah.
got new glasses today, but somehow he just didn't see which way we had turned. He turned the opposite way and just went as fast as he could to the next house and just kept going that direction. But
Yeah.
he was fine when we found him. But again, just like that momentary panic, like that is super scary. Like when that sort of thing happens, you know.
I was picking up Halloween decorations the other day, and Owen was inside and I was outside. And I went around through the garage to come in, and I shut the garage and I came inside, and Owen wasn't inside anymore. And
Yeah.
I ran out because I saw the door open. And so I'm like, oh, like he'd gone outside. And then I went out and I couldn't see him outside. I started yelling his name. He runs around the corner. He was scared too. He's like, I was trying to go find you and I was going to go in the garage, but then the door shut. And I was like, it's okay. Just come here. Like,
Oh,
don't
it's scary. But
leave the
so
house. Like,
I mean, you know, again, like when we watch all these movies with like monsters and all this kind of stuff, like none of that really phases me that much. But like the child thing, that I mean, just because like it can so
yeah.
easily, like you can lose sight of a child, so it's just scary, right? Like that whole situation. So yeah,
Yeah. And
um,
honestly, I feel like it is a big message about going camping. I feel like they're saying don't go camping because your child will get abducted, which is why I don't go camping.
right, yeah. Same for
Mhm.
me. Although
Mhm.
I will admit, especially because I like air conditioning and a comfortable bed.
Yes.
That's really what it
But
comes down to.
also, your kid could get abducted and
That's true.
then their body could be put into an animatronic and you just won't ever know.
Right. At a cheesy 80. So that one last question I was going to ask about this movie. They never tell us what year this is supposed to be set in, but I kind of kept getting the vibe it's like the 90s maybe, like early to
But
mid
their
90s.
technology was modern.
But was it? What was I mean because like they're watching CRT televisions in all the
They had
houses.
cell phones.
Did they have cell phones? I
Yep.
guess they did.
They
So
had
why were
cell
they
phones.
watching CRT TVs and you know what I mean? Like and I don't know,
So
it was weird.
in Freddy's, why was that like the
Well, I
modern
mean, I knew
one?
that they were saying it was kind of out of date, but it still worked, like the security system. But in, I guess Mike, whatever the character's name, I know, and I get it. Like their monetary situation was not great. Like I know that that was part of kind of the theme there. But I felt like even his like the cars that I saw on the streets were not as new. Like I don't know.
I feel like, again, pay attention because I feel like sorry, for a second I thought it was past 6 o'clock because I never changed my clock over there,
You got
and then I
okay, exactly.
realized it's not. I just never changed that clock. That's fine.
Yeah,
But if you look at the aesthetic of a lot of movies now, like horror movies, they try to do that. They vague up because if they make it too technology based, then they have to account for all of that technology in like
right.
their suspense and horror. But I've noticed that even in the new Scream movies, even though like we clearly know what it is, like I do feel like they create these costumes and sets that look older even though they're set today. And I do that too sometimes even because I think it gives a creepier vibe. Modernism is not creepy.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
So
because
I think
anytime you've got an issue,
yeah,
you can just pick up this thing and
exactly. So I
whatever.
think
Yeah,
that they try to cover that as much as they can. And part of that is with like the aesthetic.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I was trying to figure that out for a while too, and then I was like, okay, it's modern, it's today. They just
Well,
are using
I mean,
that palette.
I think you were probably on the same mindset as me of like, well, clearly it doesn't matter because they didn't say like they didn't start the movie by saying, oh, 1993 or anything like that. Like
Yeah,
it just
which I'm
vaguely,
glad. I like when they don't necessarily date something because then you can
yeah,
kind of input your own, and I think that that's smart sometimes.
yeah, Yeah, but even I'm just thinking back, like when he had that guy's phone number, like he was dialing him on a landline, like to get the job and stuff like that. Like I don't know, it was just kind of weird. But anyway,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter in the long run. But
I mean, I could analyze the crap out of it and be like, well, it's because he's stuck in a time when his brother was abducted and he can't move into the future. And I mean,
this
we
is
could
what we
make,
do, right? This is yeah.
yes.
Um, so we were just chatting before this about the Thanksgiving slasher movie. So that you said that's next weekend. You think it
I'm
comes
pretty
out?
sure it comes out next
Okay.
weekend.
So we're gonna see that, I think, and we're gonna review that, which I'm super
Mhm.
excited about. I hope it fills that niche that we need of a staple Thanksgiving season slasher film that we can come back to year after year. I
And
guess
it
we'll see what
looks pretty
happens.
slashery, so I hope they don't add any sort of like, oh, it's a ghost from
I
1673.
think I don't know. The vibe I've gotten from it is that it's like scream set at Thanksgiving. We'll see if
I
that's
hope it is. That's what I
yeah.
want.
I
Okay,
think that's
good.
what we're gonna get. Hopefully, I don't know. We'll see.
Yes.
Cool. Well, have a great trip. Kim's going up to the Big Apple soon. Have fun.
I am.
And yeah, we'll be back soon with thanks. I keep saying almost Thanksgiving, but Thanksgiving. That's what we're gonna be back with soon. Because I keep
Oh,
thinking of
it's
that
called
movie.
Thanksgiving? It's not called Thanksgiving?
It is
I
called
think in my
Thanksgiving.
I think in my head I've been saying Thanksgiving because I want it to be called that.
There's already there's already a movie called Thanksgiving about
That's
a killer
true.
killer
Yes.
turkey, which is not a
Yeah.
great movie, but it's
They
still
were probably
funny.
so mad. They were probably like, we wanted to name our movie that, and now a killer turkey took it from us.
Yeah,
But
they could have called it the better Thanksgiving. I don't know,
the
or something
better,
like that.
the superior Thanksgiving.
There's like an
Yeah.
Amazon driver, like he parked like near our cul-de-sac, and
Mm.
he's like dashing from
Oh.
house to house with like armfuls of things. Which is what does that say about modern society? I don't even know. But anyway, there's something you can
That's
like.
the real horror movie.
Yeah, it really is. Okay, well, we'll be back soon with Thanksgiving. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yes.